Morning, Ma. So here is today's poem for us. It is called Ambition and it is by Dean Young. Is the idea to make a labyrinth of the mind bigger? What's the matter? You still come out of the womb dark into the sneering court of the sun and don't know which turn to take. So what? You're made of twigs anyway. You were on an errand but never came back, spent too long poking something with a stick. Was it dead or never alive? Invisibility will slow down soon enough for you to catch up and pull it over yourself. No one knows what colour the first hyena's tongue to reach you will be, or the vultures who are slow, careful unspellers. So go ahead, become an expert in sleep or not. Either way, you can live in a rose or smoke only so long. You will still be left off the list. You will still be rain, blurry as a mouse. So I thought I might use this poem this morning to think through my current relationship with Idiotville, this thing, this creative project that I seem to be wrestling with or arguing with on a daily basis in a very idiotic way. Is the idea to make a labyrinth of the mind bigger? Dean Young asks of ambition. And if so, that clearly doesn't make sense, because the labyrinthine mind, being its own self-generating content creator, its own YouTube or MeTube or MeatTube, its own little insatiable consumer of self-made content, requires nothing external per se to sustain its workings. So let's assume for our purposes here that he is speaking of the kind of ambition that you and I, as hard types, might recognize and display, the ambition to be loved. That is, to manifest something through our words, our gestures, our creations that compels others to momentarily or even consistently turn their attention away from themselves and towards us. Perhaps only for the length of a glance or, the opening seconds of a video. Most videos, 1 minute and they're gone. But perhaps ideally in a more sort of sustained relational way, a more binding way, so as to become those entities we might call friends, lovers, confidants. Love here, in the way that I'm using it, includes, we could say, all the needs of the heart. To be seen, to be validated, to be understood, to be desired, to be recognized, to be admired, to be accepted, affirmed, sought after, nurtured, celebrated, witnessed, held in mind, prioritized, and of course, ideally, because it is an idea, cherished. The game for us heart types, Enneagram 2, 3, 4, is to find ways, often through creative means, in the case of the 4, us so-called romantic individualists, to attract others to us, those who we perceive as maybe having the potential to give us the love that we seek. It is, as this poem makes painfully clear, a completely futile endeavor. Whatever you do to get love, no matter how funny, no matter how clever or interesting you try to make yourself in the process, you will still be left off the list. You will still be rain, blurry as a mouse. And this is because love, or at least the qualities of love that I've just listed, cannot reliably be obtained, for us mere mortals anyway, by striving to be lovable or admirable to others, by allowing, for a little bit, but maybe not completely, right? For allowing the ego cage to seize upon whatever talents we might possess and then kind of, weaponizing them or ourselves in the name of desirability, of lovability. Love, as we know, for the most part, is achieved by stroking and facilitating other ego structures, by tending to the self-mythologies of all and every other idiot in our midst, by making other people feel, however briefly, more real or lovable to themselves. Which, of course, is what I do in my role here as a therapist. So for like an Enneagram 1 idiot, I might affirm that their goodness is not conditional on perfection. I would maybe try to help them see that love isn't earned through self-correction or relentless effort, but through being fully human with all their flaws, blah, blah, blah. For an Enneagram 2 idiot, I might make sure that they feel seen and valued for who they are, not just for what they do for others, reminding them that they don't have to earn love through sacrifice, that it's already theirs, etc., blah, blah, blah. For the Enneagram 3s, I guess I would kind of reflect back to them that they might be vaguely worthy of love, even when they're not achieving, show them that love isn't based on how well they perform, but on who they are beneath all the accolades. Of course, they don't believe it. I don't believe it either, to be honest. But they pay me to say this, and so I do, very genuinely and with a great deal of authenticity, alongside serving them tea. For the Enneagram 4 idiots, I honor their depth, their uniqueness, while keeping them vaguely anchored in reality. We look at the possibility that perhaps they don't have to suffer oh so beautifully to be loved, that they are already worthy, even in the mundanity of themselves, and their, 4-ish narcissism, worthy of love. They're not, of course, they're really not, but I have to hold this line for them. I mean, what am I supposed to do? Agree with their depressive realism and its unassailable truth? No, I can't do that. They're paying me. I can't do that. For the Enneagram 5s, I give them, space while also offering steady connection, blah, 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 blah. For Enneagram 6s, like Jeremy here, he's a 6, very loyal. I offer consistency and reassurance, blah, blah, blah. Hardly ever see Enneagram 7s in therapy. They haven't got time for it. Never see an Enneagram 8, 1 or 2 9s. So I don't know. Don't really need to think about what they require, because they don't require anything, at least not from me. The only downside to this role is that instead of loving me, people pay me. Whatever the fundamental social debt, we might say, of our interpersonal human contract, which we could frame it as I see you because you see me, gets settled via a flat fee, thus freeing them from the need to ever reciprocate in kind. The transaction completes itself in the figure of a sort of a receipt rather than any form of mutual complementarity, in financial settlement rather than in emotional allegiances. And so another therapy hour comes to a close. They leave lighter and hopefully, feeling a little bit more loved and cared for, while I enjoy the fleeting satisfaction that I have been able to do this and earn some money for my future hip replacement and whatever operations I'm going to have to pay for in the future. The therapy hour, as intimate and loving as it often is, perhaps the most intimate and loving times I've ever had with other human beings, if I'm absolutely honest with myself, is of course purely transactional. My emotional labor, my love, exchanged for their fee, a transaction. And once I've listened and reflected back to them, once I've written up my notes and sent these to them as an additional reinforcement of my love, once their payment for this service has been pocketed, I can ask no more of them, nor them of me. I've always thought psychotherapy to be the psycho-spiritual equivalent of sex work, and I continue to see it as such. They come round, I give them the loving boyfriend, girlfriend experience, or even better, right? Imagine a boyfriend or girlfriend whose only desire is to listen with exquisite attention and care to every utterance that falls from your lips, turning those utterances, whatever they are, no matter how banal they are, however they come, into these sort of profound statements on the human condition, making you feel exquisitely and completely seen and heard, as if your thoughts, your feelings, and your life circumstances really, really matter to me, and thus should also really, really matter to you, self-compassion, self-love, etc., etc. This, we might say, is the magic of love. And if you pay me £60, I will make you feel more cherished, more significant, more irreplaceable, more profoundly understood than you have ever felt before. Trust me, I can make that happen for you. Actually, I can make that happen for just about anyone. It's a skill. It's like giving someone a blowjob. You get good at it, but also I think that it's kind of, it's the usage of a certain energy or essence, which I suppose I have, and that I can rely on in order to give others the love that they need, which I guess is why I'm able to make a living from my emotional labor called psychotherapy, and that is what I plan to do until I die. Whatever you might say, we're made of twigs anyway, so, why should one twig require of another twig what is predominantly a fantasy of love, the so-called Higher life forms, insects, animals, don't love each other. They signal, they bond for survival, they engage in instinctual choreography, mating displays, territorial rituals, acts of dominance and submission. You know, the occasional stroke of mutual grooming, which could of course be read as a form of tenderness, but you know, even among the so-called social animals, what looks like affection is often just, let's be fair, an evolutionary imperative, which is to say the adaptive glue of necessity and cooperation, survival, reciprocity, symbiosis, obligation, bonding systems shaped by the pressures of evolutionary survival. Love, as we conceive it, is a kind of anomaly, an aberration of consciousness, a byproduct of the human compulsion to narrativize its needs. A beetle does not weep for another beetle. A lioness does not sit in longing writing songs or poems about the lion who, I don't know, hooked up with his ex and then decided to stay with her. And yet here we are, tangled as ever in our absurd human desires and expectations, demanding of each other something, you know, nature itself never really promised us. "What's the matter?" is a line from the poem that can be read in a variety of ways. As a sort of casual inquiry, standing in for a gesture of care, curiosity. What's wrong? You know, what's troubling you? So as to bridge some sort of, I don't know, affective gap between speaker and listener. Read another way, it takes on a kind of metaphysical weight. What is the matter that shapes our odd human beingness? You know, a sort of what's the matter probe, if you like, into the substance of our aliveness. Or, I don't know, perhaps it could be read as having a somewhat sharper, more dismissive edge to it, you know, becoming a kind of challenge or a sort of rhetorical jab. What's the problem? What's your problem? Why are you making such a fuss about being unseen, about being loveless in however you experience that state? You know, less an invitation to answer, more a way of shutting the question down before we can even begin interrogating it, because it's maybe painful to interrogate that question. What's the matter? You still come out of the womb dark into the sneering court of the sun and don't know which turn to take. So what? You know, you're made of twigs anyway. What do you want? What is true, other than in the eyes of God, another fantasy of human self-importance, in the eyes of God, you know, this human consciousness, it's just a twig. It's just one of billions and billions and billions of insignificant carbon-based life forms currently choking the essence out of a small planet located at right ascension 0 hours, declination 0 degrees in the Orion arm of the Milky Way galaxy, third rock from the sun, roughly 93 million miles from that aforesaid star, orbiting at an average speed of about 67,000 miles per hour, which is to say, spiraling through space with no destination whatsoever. Me, you, Earth, this white tea, the universe, all made of twigs. All made of matter. Light matter, dark matter, whatever. So what, says Dean Young. So what? Invisibility will slow down soon enough for us to catch up and pull it over ourselves, right? Death, whether the death of a YouTube channel that no one watches or our own personal mortality, will slow down and thus catch up with us soon enough for it to bestow its services our way. So even if you are currently the most famous man or woman on this planet right now, even if you are Taylor Swift or Timothée Chalamet, you will become invisible to the eyes of the world, to the dwindling numbers of likes and subscriptions, and maybe even to the other human beings in your own social circle one day, maybe even quite soon, to lovers, to friends, you know, ties and connections progressively fading out until within a few years, at a personal level, or a generation or two at an impersonal level. Not even you, Taylor Swift, will be loved, not even from afar, by people you've never met, nor have the intention of ever connecting with. No one knows what color the first hyena's tongue to reach you will be. In other words, no one knows when the rot and what kind of rot will set in to your twiggy self, nor how the vultures, those slow, careful unspellers, might unravel the story we've been telling ourselves about ourselves so far in order to get through our one utterly insignificant life, at least somewhat egoically intact. I think all of this really, for me anyway, speaks to my dilemma with Idiotville. You know, in the language of the poem, we might say that in the last year, I have been on a kind of errand, poking something with a stick. The something being the human viewer, of course, 2 eyes, 2 ears, a heart and a mind, delivered to me by this, I don't know, godlike algorithm that we're all chasing and paying for, sometimes literally here on YouTube, you know, with content or with $150 a year to keep the adverts at bay. And the stick, I guess, being whatever utterances I might find myself saying, either spontaneously or through careful writing and editing, in order to try and get a little bit of love out of this process for myself, as well as, you know, giving love to other people, you know, all of us involved in this sort of creation consumption dyad. And what I've learned so far is, which I think is also the message of the poem, is about the essential futility of striving, maybe of striving in a fundamental way for anything, but most especially for love, right? The absurdity of my heart-shaped ambitions in the social media world, where obscurity, decay, and insignificance are not just inevitable, but of course par for the course. In recognizing this, I have also started to play, you may have noticed, a very weird, very Enneagram 4 game on here of hiding and revealing, offering and withdrawing, exposure and concealment. So I'll make a video, post it, and then almost immediately, probably the same day, you know, with very strong feelings of shame, I will hide it in one of the playlists or erase it, you know. In this way, those people who love me to some degree, and currently I would say the people who do this are intrinsically family members, you know, you and Sister M, Brother Rob, he's disappeared, never hear from him, so I don't know. But you still watch the stuff, right? And I guess in whatever capacity, I don't know, I show up in, you still want to hear from me, and that's all good. But the public attention-seeking side of things, which is kind of what MeTube or, you know, content creation is fundamentally about, has become very fraught and uncomfortable recently. If I post something and it gets a view to like ratio of, let's say, 10 to 1, 10 views, 1 like, or even less, then as a content creator, I have failed to get your love. It's as simple as that. If I can't even get 3 or 5 likes for every 50 to 100 views, then there's no way, at least from the perspective of my ego cage and that of others, that I'm ever going to get any of the real stuff, the usable stuff, which is to say that transactional love that makes the world go round. If you don't love me when I'm being my most lovable, well, chances are you're going to hate me in every other iteration of self that I can possibly bring to the table. And that's worrying for me here in my ego cage. This is how love works, right? You do, say, present something appealing to me, and I feel an emotional warmth, which we might call liking or loving back to you. You entertain me, I reward you. You reflect me, I embrace you. You affirm me, I follow you. That's how love works. And also this is how YouTube works. This is how MeTube, YouTube works. How all human relationships work. It's a game. It's a game. And it's a game I'm not playing very well. You offered me something very wise the other day when you sent me that voice note, which was essentially, chill the fuck out, Steve. You know, put on your idiotic channel, whatever you fancy. Try not to worry too much about the process, because is the idea to make a labyrinth of the mind bigger? You idiot. What's the matter? You still come out of the womb dark into the steering court of the sun and don't know which turn to take? Ah, so what, right? You're made of twigs anyway, etc., etc. Okay. So you make a video which is seen by no one. You make a video which is seen by someone, whatever. You and all the other idiot content creators, you are not making a fool of yourself for them. What you are making is a place for language, a place for logos in your life, who has always been your beloved, who has always been your God and will remain so. It's all good. Yes, you want this place, Idiotville, to be a real place, seeing as you have to put up with it, with the act of creation, this thing you're compelled to do anyway, anyhow, this being your transmitting fetish as a human creature. But as for matter and mattering, it matters, as W.S. Graham would say, only insofar as you want to be telling yourself alive, about yourself alive. Your earnest game is always the same, to call out into the void, knowing it is a void, and that no one, human or otherwise, is probably listening, but to keep on calling anyway, because like the bird, cheep, 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 that's all you can do. So all good. And if you need to confirm that, let the Yi give you a hexagram and some Uma, which is to say some universal mothering wisdom, in order to seal, affirm, sanction, or crystallize this. And that's why I've brought in Jeremy. You're going to do this for us today, Jeremy, yeah? Okay, buddy. So the way I'm doing it nowadays with the cards, you've got now a pack of these yourself, so right, is, I don't know, I'll just feel through, and I'll just sort of, I don't know, just kind of split it where my fingers fall, if you like, right? So let's say we split it there. I don't know, what's that? Small influence, small influences, small influences. Okay, Jeremy, my friend, this is where you do your magic, Jeremy. Small influences. I'm all ears, buddy. What do you got to say?
Okay, hexagram 9, Xiao Chu, small influences, wind over heaven, also known as small accumulation, small taming, small influences, a hexagram of constraint, restraint, and the slow gathering of energy that does not yet break the sky. The wind moves above heaven, but it does not yet bring the storm. Okay, let's start with the trigram, shall we? Wind above and heaven below. Wind above, Xun, stands for influence, movement, circulation, but also a form of gentle penetration, something that moves slowly, pervasively, without force, but with lasting effect. The wind above does not rush. It disperses, it seeps into things, shaping them over time. This is your work too, not this single act of creation, as in making one video that captures the world's attention, but this sort of steady, unseen process of shaping the space around you, whether anyone is watching or not. Heaven, Chen, below, is, as you know, pure potential, the unformed, the vast expanse of possibility. It is you, we might say, transmitting into the void, and it is also the void itself. It is the paradox of ambition, the creative impulse that is limitless, yet always somehow constrained, we could say, by form and by human attention and by the realities of an indifferent audience. The relationship between these trigrams suggests an influence that is real but not fully manifest, a power that is accumulating but not yet striking. You are not failing, but nor are you succeeding in the way that you think you might need to. You are in the middle of a process that cannot yet be judged. Which of course brings us then to the poetic judgment of this hexagram, which is small taming, smooth and ordinary, clouds above but no rain falls. Here the Yi is telling you that this is not yet the time for great impact. Your efforts accumulate, they gather, but they do not yet precipitate into something tangible. The clouds form, but they do not yet rain down. Yes, this is frustrating, but it is also necessary. This is how it goes with clouds and with rain and with YouTube videos. Your process is not wrong, nor is it wasted, but it is small. Not small in worth, but in immediate effect. Your reach, your influence, your ability to command attention is constrained, and yet the clouds will rain eventually. I promise you they will. The suggestion here is that this period of invisibility is kind of part of the natural order. It is not a verdict on the value of what you create, but it's just the phase you are currently in. I mean, you sound a little bit depressed, Steve. Are you taking your sertraline? Right? Are you doing all of those things you should be doing to deal with your low mood? If not, maybe you need to really put a bit more attention into that again. The lesson here, of course, is do the work, but without cherished outcomes. Your torment, the frustration at this transactional nature of love and attention and recognition, comes from wanting reciprocity in a world where reciprocity is never promised. But Hexagram 9 reminds you that the work itself is enough and has to be enough. The work, at least for you, right, is about creating and transmitting and trusting that whatever needs to reach others will do so in its own time. Maybe not now, but in its own time. And if you can sit, if you like, with the smallness, the slow accumulation, the clouds without rain, you may find a different kind of satisfaction, one not dependent on validation, but just on the sheer act of speaking into existence that which for you needs to be spoken. The wind above heaven does not force itself upon the sky, it simply moves, and so do you, my friend, so do you.
Thank you, Jeremy. That was a great reading. Thank you.
Jesus, don't cry. You can rely on me, honey. You can combine anything you want. I'll be around. You were right about the stars. Each one is a setting sun. Tall buildings shake, voices escape, singing sad, sad songs, tuned to chords strung down your cheeks, bitter melody.